What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Noizze Podcast, part of the Noizze Podcast Network and sponsored by Satanic Tico. I'm your host, your boy, Chris Pugh, and I am joined once again, but not in visual form again, Samuel Lewis. Let's move on to album reviews. We're going to start with Sevendust, Truth Killer. It is released 28th of July via Napalm Records. It's the Atlanta, Georgian nu metal's 14th album and the follow-up to 2020's Blood and Stone. I want to pretense this review by stating that I've only actually ever listened to one Sevendust album, and that is Home, which was released in 1999. I kind of went through one of those. Here's the best nu metal albums you might not have heard that like they're not the obvious ones, and it's a great album. Sevendust are quite a they're a popular band. I think they've got three albums that were certified gold. I think there's 3 or 4 of their albums that were in the top 15 Billboard 200. So we are talking about a sizable, like a really sizable band, actually, that a lot of people never seem to mention a lot or don't really seem to get a massive amount of traction. But we're part of that like burst of nu metal that I was talking about when we were discussing the news previously. Sam, I've not listened to another Sevendust album apart from Home, so I really don't know what happened between 1999 and 2023. But based on this album, it's something bad because this is Sam, this isn't a good album at all, is it?
No, it's like an imitation of rock music, isn't it? It's I've talked about this before, so I'll save the rant. We'll put it on the personal highlights reel or something like that. But this is like, I'm sure I talked about this Five Finger Death Punch and reviewed that a couple of years ago. It kind of sounds like all the songs are like, we've got a snowboarding advert and we need a Rocky soundtrack for it, or we've got NHL 24s coming out and we need like a generic sounding rock band to play the background of like this montage. And it's like what a PR executive think rock music sounds like. Do you know what I mean? Because it's got some thumping riffs and things, and it has some choruses where some things are said, presumably profound. And there are some moments where we transition from verses and choruses, and he screams some stuff, and there's some drums that are turned up. But in the end, it's really shallow. It's really thin on the ground. And there's very little depth to it. And by track 6, I was like, "Oh, you're doing this again! Again, we're doing this." You wrote 5 versions of this and decided, you know what? Let's go for number 6, man. Let's roll the dice again. This has been working.
Oh, mate. Us. Oh, mate.
So repetitive.
The way this album opens, I might let the devil win. So again, this is a one Sevendust album, Home, 1999, classic nu metal album, great. Denial's a banger. Like, it's got this kind of pomp and attitude and pace and kind of venom to it. And I might let the devil win. And I was like, there's no way this is Sevendust. And do you know what's amazing as well? It's the same. They've barely had like any departures from the original lineup. Like, it's the same lineup. They did that 1999 album. And what's ironic is I'm usually the guy that kind of points fingers and laughs at the people who are like, God, it was better in 99, wasn't it? But in this case, God, it really was. I might let the devil win. It does the very thing that I worried this album was going to do. Like, the band are trying to sound modern and don't play to the strengths at all. It's got this kind of meandering horror instrumental that's just like an Ice Nine Kills ripoff. And I don't even like Ice Nine Kills. Do you know what I mean? Like, honestly, this album, if you're British, you'll understand the reference. Like, if you're British and you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you'll understand the reference I'm going to make here. This song is the equivalent of your uncle wearing G-Star jeans in your local pub. Like, fair play for you making the effort, mate, but you're 15 years too late here. Like, G-Star jeans were like popular in 2008. Like, I understand that you're trying to look younger, you're trying to fit in, and you don't want to look 40, but mate, you're 15 years too late. So it is better to just turn up in straight leg jeans than turn up in G-Star jeans, mate, because we've moved way past that now. And actually, the straight leg jeans have garnered more respect than that 96 that's on your backside. If you're British, you'll understand the reference I'm making there. And what's kind of painful, Sam, is that it doesn't get better. from there. Like there
No, it
really
doesn't.
is. It really is. There really isn't much else that happens. There's some of the lyrics on this album. Oh man, there's there. I think it was on everything. Yes, I'm scrolling from an out. Say yeah, it was on this song everything. It sounds like something Kid Rock would have written. Like if you just tuned his guitar down a little. These lyrics. So what do you want to say? I'm gonna make you believe I can be anything. I won't change an effing thing. Don't walk away from me. Who's writing this? Who's that
Yeah.
for?
Do you think they ran out of things to do and they were like, "Do you want to add some synth?" And they just put some synth in, and I was like, "What's this for?"
it's got to be
like,
that. It's
like honestly, I've got a neighbor who I walked home the other day, and I came back and he was listening to Trapped, and he would love this record.
oh god.
And it's that kind of like it's like dad rock a bit, isn't it? It's kind of like you can imagine someone in like Oakley sunglasses, driving down, listening to this sort of stuff. It's all very boring. It's all very generic. Like I thought when I got to like by the time we got to like superficial drug
Oh
near the end, I was like flagging. Like just babies, like their head rolls around. And,
yeah.
and like you can see that they're just like they can't even keep their heads up. It was like that. I was like, this has been the longest 40 minutes of my life. And I
Oh,
will
this
warn you
album is
for
so long. This album is
yeah,
so long.
there's like 14 songs on this album, and they could have done the job with six. It's like every song has got one slight inflection that makes it different, and then they just revert back to type. So with Sick Mouth, it opens with a high pitched riff instead of a low riff. Leave Hell Behind, it opens with a piano. Um, Love and Hate, they open with some like, oh, let's do 16ths on the hi-hats this time. But everything else is just exactly the same all the time. And the decisions they make on some of the verses here, where they open with a okay, listenable riff, and then they just take that away and vote to go for like slowed down, weirdly electronic, um, rubbish verses. Let's just be frank with him with the vocalist singing over the top before getting back to the original chorus. It's like, so what am I supposed to treat this verse as just like the advertisements in between what you really want to say? Like it is really really depressing. It sounds like you talked about it was in they were really big in 1999. It sounds like they're trying to write every wrestler's theme combined with some of these choruses. It's just like generic, like mid card kind of third gear. Um, this is what rock should sound like. We think question mark type stuff. It's yeah, man. Like 14 albums of this. Christ.
Well, this is the thing. I really want a Sevendust fan who's listening to this album review to type in the comments and tell me what other Sevendust album I should listen to, because I've only heard Home, to go from Home in 1999 to this, and they've done what, like under the 11 albums in between. There must have been like some kind of movement of the needle where you can see this happening. Like I find it incredibly hard to believe that they've done like 10 new metal albums, and then in the late 2010s or early 2020s, we're like, right, okay, it's been like a really boring Kid Rock style rock band now. There's a song on this called "Won't Stop the Bleeding,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, it sounds like something that they'd give like an X Factor contestant who likes rock music to sing on like the semi final,
Yeah,
and be
definitely.
like, oh, it's got a big chorus, so your voice is big, isn't it? And we'll get some confetti shot out as the big chorus hits if you want to, because that's good for rock music, isn't it? Like the one thing I will say is that some of the tracks are kind of redeemed by some like really nice guitar work, sorry, by Clint Lowry, who does some pretty cool solos and some pretty decent riffs. But on a whole, this who is this album for? Like, this is like bland mush. This album is. It's just tasteless half house rock that might have still sounded out of place in 2008. Like, I criticise Nickelback. I don't really think much of them, but at least they're fun to listen to. Like, this is kind of bland. It's middle of the road. It's not fun to listen to. It's like really boring. Like, I think about like Modern Europe practice as teachers, and I'm thinking, God, I'm really uninterested in this, and I can't wait for this to end. I really hope the kids don't feel like this while I teach, because if they do, I feel really sorry. Because this is a difficult experience. This is so vanilla. It's so boring. I stopped after what was the song? What was the song called? Leave Hell Behind. I stopped writing notes. So I'm gonna start writing notes. This album, like the entire record, sounds like what they would give the alternative guy for the final of The Voice or an X Factor series. It's got no charisma. It's got no bite. It's got no personality. It's got no particularly interesting quality that demands anything from me to buy into. I respect Sevendust. Again, I'm going to, anecdotally mention Home was an important album in nu metal. What has happened here? This isn't good. I would love to have a conversation, not because like I would take the mick out of him. Like I would love to have a conversation with someone who thinks this album's really good, just because I'd be like, right, what is it? What would you like about this? You've got to tell me. Now, I kind of looked up like Sevendust reviews of other albums, and apparently Blood and Stone in 2020 was like their best album in years, and Blood and Stone was the predecessor to this album. Out of curiosity, I'm going to listen to Blood and Stone tomorrow and see whether this is like a misstep from something they achieved on that album, or whether for some reason magazines and websites just decided to be nice in 2020 because COVID was happening and didn't want to be nasty about anyone. Because if Blood and Stone sounds like this, and Kerrang and Metal Hammer and Louder Sound and stuff are talking about it being like a return to form for Sevendust, then they've lost credibility with me, because I just find this is astonishing to believe that someone could listen to this album and think, oh yeah, they're back on form into Sevendust.
Yeah, I would be prepared to bet that you're going to get to the end of that experience tomorrow and be like, well, actually, that's all bad. It's all bad, and a return to form for Sevendust is kind of like when the guy at the retirement home just like jerks awake and he's able to like contribute to a conversation for 5 to 7 minutes. Just like, he was really engaged today. Did you see him? And it's like that kind of stuff. And to your point about teaching, if you were teaching and the first 3 things that you said just didn't land, you might rephrase them and try something else. They appear to have got by the 4th song and be like, look guys, no one's dead yet. We're doing this. It's happening. Let's kick this 14th chorus into overdrive. No. Let's extend the pre-chorus. They'll love it when we extend the pre-chorus. It's terrible. And I'm willing to bet that they've always been terrible. And
no, Home's good. I swear to you, Home's good.
That's fine. I'm willing to bet that the rising tide of nu metal lifted a decent album upwards, and I'm sure it's very good. And then they've had a decent contract with a record label ever since, and they'll have the 1,000 to 2,000 hardcore fans in varying cities around Europe and America, I assume. But if they come back round on the album circle, I'll just write the number 4 next to it, and I'll just move on with my day.
Yeah. Just in closing, if you're a Sevendust fan, drop a comment and let me know the next Sevendust album I should listen to. But if it sounds like this, don't bother commenting. You are better off talking to a different podcast, because I want another 45 minutes. Like, this was one of the longest 40 minutes of my year. It was a drain of my days listening to this album.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
We're going to leave it there for this episode of the Noizze podcast. Thank you very much for listening. We really, really appreciate you coming back with us. And me and Sam are going to try and hit, at the very, very least, every fortnight now. We used to just do every album that we wanted to talk about. We do an episode for, but that then left us with like extensive dry spells of recording shows, and we don't really want to do that. So we're going to go back to like the fortnightly release and try and stick to that. Although we are going to have another episode coming out in the next 10 days, because next week, in 2 weeks, we've got the releases of the new Earn album and the new Teenage Wrist album. So me and Sam are going to be here to record an episode discussing those albums as well. So yeah, stick around. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us /like/subscribe, depending on whichever service you use. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, we will be there. Follow us on Twitter @Noizze Podcast if you want to keep up with our daily ridiculous incessant posting. And thank you so much for listening. The new Signs of Swarm album is a superb deathcore record that I really, really like. It's 100% going to go into my best of 2023 Spotify playlist as soon as it's out. Great record. And we will be back in around about 10 days discussing Teenage Wrist and discussing Earn. Thank you so much for listening. We love you and we'll see you soon. Bye.